This interview was recorded on the 17th of April. Hello, welcome back to our series of interviews with Euros members across the world. It's my great pleasure today to introduce you to Stephane Compain from LuxRelo. First of all, one thing I didn't realise until we were just talking then, you are based in Luxembourg, but not living in Luxembourg.
Yes, that's correct. I'm a cross-border, like a lot of people in Luxembourg. So we have our company with my business partner and wife, Sandrine, in Luxembourg. And we are just living across the border. You have around 200,000 cross-borders workers commuting every day, and 104,000 coming from France, which is, quite a lot for a small country of 620 inhabitants.
Yeah. That's huge. And so, I mean, you put a very interesting statistical post on LinkedIn. I saw this morning. That was, I'm going to go back and look at that. But so tell me how does that work in terms of borders being closed? The restrictions are first of all, are the restrictions different between France and Luxembourg?
Well, they are lighter than in France, meaning that in Luxembourg, people are allowed to go outside. They're allowed to go cycling, walking, but they must maintain some distance and no gathering like in other countries. So the police is here to make sure that people, don't organize a barbecue in their backyards or don't do gathering in the playground as well.
Yeah.
And in France, it's stricter. You need papers to show, that you are authorized to go out to the grocery, to work. So in my case, when I go to Luxembourg, I have now 4 papers that I need to show in case I'm caught by the police. So you have one to say that you are going to work. Then you have one from the Luxembourgish government that has to be signed by by our company. And then we have one by the French government that has to be also signed and stamped. And another one, which is a new one since last week, where to be able to come back, which shows that you are entitled to go back from Luxembourg to France.
That is some heavy bureaucracy, and I mean, I know obviously as a professional in our industry, you're very adept at being able to sort all of that kind of thing out. But that's a lot.
Yeah, that's a lot, and I think it's and it's why from the beginning we decided to communicate on that. We shared the paperwork with our network because we are used to paperwork, to dealing with bureaucracy and documents for custom clearance, for example, and for work permits. But for a lot of people, it's new, and you have to get used to it. But I think it's in a way, it's to make sure that when people go out, they reflect on it. Yes. And they have to write or to fill in. There's now an app to use. So, it's a reflection. Okay. Do I really need to go out?
Yeah. I think it's really interesting. And we're in the process of putting together some intercultural research on this, because, I mean, what they did in France with the paperwork thing, you're quite right. It makes people think about where it is they're going and what they're doing, and still allows you the freedom to be able to do that kind of thing, which I thought was very smart. If you look at, what's going on, for example, in the UK, we're not under an obligation to explain where we're going. And I think, I don't know, it's going to be interesting to see whether that becomes the next step. So go on, sorry.
UK is more like Luxembourg, where they expect the people to be reasonable and stay at home. And so there's no obligation. But they expect the people to comply, which they did, except maybe a few times at the beginning, nice weather. And people went gathering in parks, and the police had to come and make, with the fine are quite high in Luxembourg. So it makes you think twice if you do the wrong thing.
The rules. That is very interesting. And I mean, from the point of view of, you have gone from a seamless integration between France and Luxembourg, into this absolute separation. That Was that process well implemented by the two governments? Was it, or were you delayed in being able to move back to forwards, go to your office?
I must say that we were a bit concerned of what was going to happen, because the first country that started to implement travel restriction was Germany, where suddenly they blocked the borders. And suddenly it was a nightmare. You know, how can the cross-border workers in Germany come to work in Luxembourg? And luckily, there had been a lot of discussions about how we can do that. So a paper has been put in place right away between Germany and Luxembourg. The German, on their side, they have a kind of sticker that they put behind the windscreen of the car, which is much easier to check at the border.
Yeah.
The main problem with Germany is that they've reduced the number of roads that are open to enter the country, which means that you have people have to travel a lot, you know, to go to their work. In France, it's not the case. All the borders have been opened. You are free to cross, and there has been discussion about closing Luxembourg. The issue is that Luxembourg depends on the cross-border workers. Absolutely. I think it's more than 60% of the health force, health workers that are cross-borders. Right. So it was impossible for the Luxembourg government to close their borders.
Absolutely. I mean, that is such a critical part of the infrastructure of all our countries right now. Yeah, you couldn't do away with that. So that's really interesting. Just go back on something. So the German border with Luxembourg, they actually said, okay, this route will now be policed. Yeah. If you're coming in on this road, it'll be policed, and these roads will be closed.
They did exactly the same in Switzerland, where they put, you know, those blocks on at the border on the roads. So the borders are completely closed, and you cannot cross. So you have 3 or 4 roads where you can enter Switzerland or now Germany. Yeah. So it's to make sure that it's easier to control, and that, you know, people don't, you know, try to pass by small backside roads.
Sure, that is fascinating. And I mean, from the point of view as well of, I mean, the only time I've had an experience like that is going between Canada and the US, and the queues are unbelievable. Is it quite slow?
But I must say that, you know, I'm going on a regular basis to the office, so I'm taking the motorway, which sometimes can be challenging in normal times, early morning. But now it's open. I've never been checked, right. And instead of taking 1 hour in the morning, it just takes 20 minutes.
Wow,
it's just great.
I mean, that is something again. So coming on to your teams, are they also dealing with the cross-border thing, or to some?
No. So I'm working with my wife, so of course we are both at home. Yeah. But all the others, I mean, we have one other person, a lady. She's working. She's working in Luxembourg, so she's working from home. So that's not a real problem. We are not a big team, and we're also using freelancers. So right. we make sure that you know that they are well covered and protected in terms of you know, having enough support to go through the crisis. The Luxembourgish government has been helping a lot the companies in terms of financial support and short-term unemployment during the crisis.
Oh, I wanted to ask you about that. So obviously your company it's lodged, as a legal entity, it's in Luxembourg, so you're able to access the Luxembourg financial release systems?
Yes, exactly. Yes, we are, I mean, our company is Luxembourgish. We are all the taxes, social security and so on are in Luxembourg, and it's only the fact that we are living in France. One important thing is that in terms of taxation, normally you are entitled only a certain number of days of home working, depending on Belgium, France, or Germany. And for France, for example, it's 29 days. And everybody was concerned, all the cross-border workers were concerned, saying, what's going to happen? Because if I work from home, then the 29 days will be reached quite quickly, and I will be also taxed in France or in Belgium or Germany. And luckily, there has been quick discussions and between the different governments, and they've agreed that this rule will be suspended during the time of the coronavirus lockdown.
I mean, it's great that they did that so quickly, because that kind of insecurity, I mean, you know, not knowing if you're going to suddenly be non-compliant with a very important law, that's really interesting. I haven't heard that from anybody else. You're the first person I've spoken to who's doing cross-border working like that. Wow. So yeah, that happened fast. It's like the government's obviously understood how much this bureaucracy was going to impact.
In a way, we are lucky in Luxembourg because it's a small country, 620 inhabitants. It's a town in most city in most countries. So it's why they are able to react quickly, to listen, you know, to the businesses, which in bigger countries like France, Germany, or the UK, it's more complex.
Yeah, it certainly is. And I mean, from that point of view, are you, so with the financial assistance that's coming your way, have those systems been put in place yet? Are you able to support yourselves, continue rent?
So we've done that right away, not knowing what's going to happen. So we've put one person into temporary unemployment and to provide assistance for the entrepreneurs. So I think there's two different schemes. One is €5,000 and one 2,500 to support the entrepreneurs, and also banks have blocked some of the payments, you know, ongoing payments that you would have on leasings and so on, and you have money borrowing guarantees by the banks and government. So, well, we didn't use that for the moment because, of course, if you start to use that money, you will have to reimburse it at one point. I know that you also can suspend the payments of social security and things like that, which we didn't do because, of course, for the moment we can do it. If the lockdown was to last very long, we would have to think about what we would do, but we didn't need to do it for the moment.
Well, I'm glad to hear it. It is very interesting again how...
Again, just again for our industry, apart from having offices that you own or that you rent, which is a fixed cost, it's not like a bar or restaurants where, you know, you have to rent the premises, you have to, reimburse every month quite a large amount of money. In our industry, you have less than in a moving industry, for example, where you have a lot of fixed costs.
Yeah, I was talking actually yesterday to Laura Ganon from Think Mobility in Brazil, and she was saying they've actually been, and this is the first time I heard this, they were designated an essential service within the country, so they've been able to continue, whereas, you know, the moving industry in the States, for example, is not in a good place. That's very interesting. I mean, as you say, it's a time when, you know, I'm quite glad as for us as an organization, we never bought commercial premises. I think there's going to be a big rethink. How are you working from home? That's all in place. It was easy to implement. You're being able to continue with your freelancers, communicate.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I'm always thinking about that day when they announced that everything was going to be closed and people will need to go home. It was like, you know, a car crashing in a wall. Suddenly, all the activity stopped. There was a kind of transition phase in Luxembourg where we were able to do virtual tour. We had customers from Italy, 2 customers that couldn't come, so we did virtual home search, using WhatsApp, and we even did a virtual tour. It wasn't really a virtual tour, but we organized it from home because we were not allowed to take the customer in our car. where we organized all the visits. So it was a kind of an accompanied visit. The estate agents were opening the apartments in advance. The person would go in, then, you know, with the mask and so on, and we managed to book an apartment. Just, you know, the last thing we were able to do in terms of home search.
Wow. Wow. I mean, that's impressive that, you know, that was able to happen. And I mean, from the point of view of, you know, talking with your customers and your clients, what messages are you getting from them at the moment?
I think the week after the first week after the lockdown, we contacted a number of our customers, which was also interesting situation, because normally you go and see them, it's very formal. I would be in a suit, you know, and it would be in their meeting room. And we had this call with two HR, where one was in the kitchen, the other one was in the living room, and, you know, they had a sweatshirt on, and it was very informal, and a lot of discussion about, you know, personal things that we would never have done in a formal meeting. And I thought that really the relationship and the discussion we had with the HR was deeper than normal, which I thought was really great. And we also wanted to show them that we were supportive, and that if they needed anything about, you know, assistance with their employees, we were there. And also telling them that things like work permits could still go on, and they shouldn't wait, because we are waiting for a backlog when things are going to start working again.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's really critical. I mean, and certainly everybody I'm talking to at the moment, they're kind of, things are not being cancelled, they're just being pushed forward, and everyone's thinking, you know,
exactly.
Yeah.
And talking to the HR, nearly all of them told me, one of the HR, she said, okay, we thought that it was complicated. We asked if we could stop hiring. And the message from the CEO was, no, we keep hiring. So they have been hiring, I think she told me in the past 3 weeks, like they have 20 people on hold that should come to Luxembourg. Yeah. And we talked to another big company within the industry, and they keep hiring, and they are still prepare for intercompany transfer between their entities, which means that that's a good sign, at least, that not everything will go back to normal, but some companies think that, you know, they will still hire, people will still move, which is a good sign for our industry.
It is indeed, and it's very interesting how it's going to be interesting over the coming weeks to see where the dialogue between, you know, corporations, centres of commerce, and governments, you know, where those dialogues are going, because, you know, I know here in the UK, for example, Tad's been doing a lot of work with the UK network, the ARP, to actually talk to government about the fact that as an essential service, you know, come the end of this, when growth has to start again and when commercial interests have to resume, mobility providers are really key.
Yeah, they are. And one of our concerns is that beginning of 2020 was just fantastic for us. And I heard that for a lot of relocation companies, it was the case. And so we have a lot of files on hold, and our concern is the day after, where, you know, everybody will say, oh, I want to come, I want to do my home search, I want to organize, you know, my registration and so on, and this will be difficult to manage. So we've also used this time where we have less on the ground work to work on our processes and procedures. So we've streamlined what we had as processes to make sure that we work even better when things are starting again.
It is going to be so interesting to see what the long-term impacts are going to be on all of us from this kind of thing, because like you say, you know, we have time to figure out what, it's very interesting. Before the last board meeting that we were supposed to have for Euro, which ended up, you know, postponing the Seville conference, was meant to be a top-down review of everything Euro has done for the last 20 years. Strangely, now we have the time, you know, like you.
In a way, I mean, of course, it's terrible. People are dying, and it's affecting a lot of businesses in terms of revenue. But as a business, we never have the time to step back and say, okay, how can we work better? How we can, we have like, the 10 times the same documents in our system. How we can, make sure that things are better. And it's a time that we use for that now. And when I'm talking to colleagues worldwide, it's what they are doing as well.
Yeah, I think we're all doing it. Stephane, that's a really lovely optimistic note on which to draw a close to our conversation. It's been really, really great to talk to you. I'd love to come back and talk to you again in a few weeks' time, see where we all are. As things
just maybe if I can add one thing, we were talking about the end of the lockdown. So on Wednesday, the Luxembourgish government announced that they are going to be releasing, reducing the tight lockdown. As from Monday, some of the industry will be able to start working again. Work on sites, buildings and roads and so on will resume. And so they've set up a planning until the 4th of May, where school will start to open again, businesses and so on, shops. So we'll see how it works. They've organized the distribution of masks as well for everybody. Yeah. So they asked that as from Monday, it will be compulsory to wear a mask when you are within 2 meters from another person. So if you're going in shops, at work, wherever, it will be compulsory to have this mask.
It's really interesting how different, we were talking at the board meeting yesterday, our virtual board meeting, how different countries are responding to the end of this so differently. I mean, Austria, certainly Michelle Bramstoft is from Copenhagen, she was saying they are putting dates in place. By this date, we hope to be doing this. By this date, we hope to be doing this. Same in Germany. Same in Switzerland.
And it's what they've done in Luxembourg now as well. So
it's very smart. I mean, we were just talking about, psychologically, for me, that's really important. Even if those dates do change or get pushed back, the fact that there are dates, and in the UK, they're refusing to do that.
Yeah, because they started much later than the rest of Europe. So, the peak hasn't been reached yet, not really. So I think when things are going to be more stable in terms of people getting sick and number of deaths, then sure. When the curve will go down, yes.
And what about in France? Are you having any deadlines like Luxembourg in place, or is it?
The deadline is 11th of May. So 11th of May, okay. School will start again, and people will start to go back to work again, which is a bit strange because there's no phases in bringing back people to normal life, which I think is a bit weird. But apparently, the Prime Minister next week will make some announcement on how it will work before the 11th.
Yeah, I was going to say, because certainly everything else that I'm reading and talking to people that are saying it's phased. There'll be certain bit, like you said, there's construction will come in first, and then it will be retail, and then, that's.
And there will be surely there will be some reviews. If suddenly they see that because of that there is an increase of people getting sick, then they will change it.
Yeah. The psychology of it, we were just saying, in terms of that. I mean, I know, for example, in the British NHS, the head of psychological services is very much part of that team, trying to assess how the population is reacting to this. And
and it's the same in Luxembourg. So they've set up a task group to prepare for the end of the lockdown, and you have a psychologist in the team as well. Yeah. Because it's going to be a big impact. I'm just going to give you a small story from yesterday. So McDonald's decided to reopen their drive-in in Luxembourg.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Which was a nightmare because basically you had kilometers of queues of people waiting to go to McDonald's. So it's a concern, what's going to happen when, people will suddenly be allowed to go out if you don't put some
phases in place. Absolutely. I mean, that's so interesting you say that about McDonald's. There was a wonderful meme that I saw on WhatsApp about this mother telling her child they could no longer go to McDonald's and they could no longer go to KFC. So I can imagine there were a lot of parents with some very happy children in their cars
Yes.
when that happened. Listen, it's been a real pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Thanks for talking to me, and take care.
Thank you, and you. Stay well, stay safe. And like I say, we'll keep in touch, and we'll do this again in a few weeks' time. That would be great.
Thanks.
Thank you, Stephane. Take care. Bye-bye.